The wind cut through Manhattan like a blade, sharp and cold. But it wasn't the weather that made Ethan Cole stop. It was a trembling voice, a little girl. "Sir, I don't have any friends. Could you please come to my birthday? I promise there will be cake." Her voice cracked as she spoke, and the vast lobby of Skyline Innovations, a place where billion-dollar deals were made daily, froze with her words. A tiny shape in a faded yellow coat stood at the marble entrance, clutching a wrinkled birthday invitation, as if it were the last fragile thing she had left. People streamed past her, lawyers, executives, assistants, investors, none of them seeing her, none of them hearing the small hope in her words. Only one person stopped. Ethan Cole, the 34-year-old billionaire who could intimidate entire governments with a single market shift. The man who feared no boardroom, no negotiation, no financial risk. But a child, a trembling little girl asking him for a stranger's mercy? That froze him completely. Her brown eyes lifted, wide and hopeful, though that hope was clearly losing its strength. She held out the card with both hands, arms shaking from cold or fear. Ethan couldn't tell which. The card was bent, edges frayed, decorated in uneven purple crayon. Lena's 7th birthday. A crooked cake drawn beneath it. One lopsided candle. Her small voice trembled again. I just need one person to come." Ethan's heart, a thing he had locked behind steel walls for years, twisted. Mark, his assistant, leaned in immediately. "Sir, we don't have time for this. We're late." Lena heard it. Her shoulders fell. The invitation sagged in her hand. "It's okay," she whispered and pulled the card back. "People usually say no. Poor birthdays aren't fun anyway." That sentence nearly knocked the air out of Ethan's lungs. He, a man unused to guilt of any kind, felt something unfamiliar and painful pressing against his ribs. He stared at the girl, then at the doorman who was already subtly motioning for her to leave. "Where's your mother?" Ethan asked, trying to steady his voice. Lena pointed across the street. "She's working today. It's okay if you can't come. Maybe someone else nice will try again." Again, that word sunk deep. How many people had she already begged today? When he tried to hand back the card, she refused. "No," she said gently. "You should keep it, just in case you change your mind." She still believed he might. She still believed in strangers. Then she turned, boots scraping softly against the floor, and disappeared into the endless river of the city. Ethan stood rooted to the ground long after she vanished. A penthouse waited for him. A board meeting expected him. A global market depended on him. But all he could see was a child walking away with the last piece of her hope in her pocket. He returned to his office, shutting the door harder than intended. Normally the silence soothed him. This time it felt suffocating. His life had been meticulously controlled since Boston, since losing his mother, since watching his father chase cameras instead of raising a son, since the woman he planned to marry left 2 weeks before their wedding with a man whose laughter still haunted his memories. He built walls, but a child with a $2 card had somehow slipped through a crack he didn't know existed. He loosened his tie, stared out at the sea of people far below, and reached into his pocket. He froze. The birthday invitation was still there. He hadn't been able to throw it away. He unfolded it with a kind of reverence he didn't want to understand. The writing was uneven, some letters too big, some too small, but it wasn't the handwriting that hit him. It was the meaning. She had asked him to show up. Something he had never done well for anyone. A knock came at the door. "Sir, London investors need your confirmation for tomorrow," Mark said. "Cancel it." Mark blinked. "Cancel? Sir, they flew in." "Cancel," Ethan repeated, colder now but certain. When Mark left, Ethan whispered to the empty room, "Why can't I walk away from a child I don't even know?" There was no logical answer, but the decision was already made. The drive to Brooklyn felt surreal. Billionaires didn't show up to the birthdays of children they met on the sidewalk. They didn't roam broken sidewalks, cracked buildings, or streets that flickered under dying light bulbs. He could still turn back. No one would know, but he didn't. He followed the address scribbled in purple crayon, arriving at a leaning apartment building that looked as tired as the street it lived on. Faded balloons dangled helplessly by the door. He knocked. The door opened quickly. A woman stood there. Simple sweater, jeans, tired eyes that still held a warmth she didn't seem aware she possessed. She froze. "Mr. Cole," she breathed. "You actually came." "Just Ethan," he said softly. "Am I intruding?" "No, just surprised." "Mom, who is it?" Lena's tiny voice floated from behind her. She peeked around her mother's hip, and the transformation was immediate. Joy burst across her face like sunrise. "You came," she squealed, running into his arms with no hesitation at all. He caught her carefully, surprised at his own gentleness. "I told you I might," he murmured. "I knew someone would come for me." Someone. That word stabbed deeper than anything else. Inside, the apartment was tiny, loved but worn. The 3 cups on the table made something in his chest clench. "Were you expecting more?" he asked gently. Grace, the mother, tried to smile. She invited some kids. "Weekends are busy." Ethan saw unopened invitations on the counter. Lena tried to fill the silence. Maybe the balloons fell, or maybe they forgot. "It's okay." It wasn't okay. He knew it. Grace knew it. But Lena smiled anyway. He handed her the small gift bag. Her face lit up like she'd been handed treasure. "A sketchbook," she whispered, "and real pencils." "You deserve colors," Ethan said softly. She hugged the gift to her chest. They lit the candle, just one, sang, cut the cake, laughed, and for the first time in years, Ethan felt something warm inside him that wasn't anger or emptiness. It was belonging. Later, Lena sprawled her drawings across the small living room floor. Ethan sat with her, even though the old carpet scratched his knees. She drew a small house, a smiling sun, a garden, and finally 3 stick figures holding hands. "This is my mom," she said proudly. "This is me. And this is you." He couldn't speak for a moment. Grace paused behind them, watching quietly, her eyes shimmering. As he prepared to leave, Lena grabbed his sleeve. "Will you come back?" He looked at her, at Grace, at the drawing she had made. "Yes," he said, for the first time in his adult life. He meant it. The next morning came with a pale sun, and a sky still bruised by the night storm. Ethan barely slept. The billionaire's note had replayed in his mind over and over until dawn splintered to the curtains of his tiny apartment. "Meet me tomorrow at the address on the back of this note. 9 a.m. sharp. Ike." 11 hours of sleepless worry, excitement, and fear coiled inside him. His son Liam, only 6 and wiser than most adults, sensed everything. "Daddy, are we in trouble?" he asked while eating cereal from the chip blue bowl they shared every morning. Ethan knelt, brushing a soft curl from the boy's forehead. "No, buddy, I think someone might want to help." He didn't explain the whole truth, how the elegant billionaire, Eleanor Kensington, had left him a $0 tip, only for him to discover her note, how her message wasn't cruel, but curious. She had written, "You served me with kindness when I gave you none. I want to understand why. Come tomorrow." It felt like a test he didn't know he'd taken. At 8:40 a.m., Ethan stood outside a towering glass building that clawed at the sky. The Kensington International logo shimmered above him. Liam held his hand tightly, his small fingers like anchors, keeping him from floating away in panic. Inside, the marble lobby glowed with warm lighting. A woman in a sleek suit escorted them to a private elevator that ascended so smoothly it felt like rising on a breath. At the top floor, Eleanor stood by the panoramic windows, her posture elegant yet strangely tense. She wore a charcoal gray dress today, hair pinned back, but the faint sadness in her eyes remained the same. "Mr. Parker," she greeted softly. "And this must be Liam." Liam gave a shy wave. Eleanor surprised them both by kneeling to the boy's height. "Hi, Liam. I'm Eleanor." Her voice was gentle, nothing like the cold poise she carried the night before. After Liam settled with a coloring book her assistant brought, Eleanor motioned Ethan to sit across from her at a long oak table. "I owe you an explanation," she said. "You don't owe me anything," Ethan replied automatically. "But I do." She folded her hands. I left that $0 tip intentionally. His jaw tensed. She noticed, not to insult you, not to belittle you, to see what you would do. He blinked, taken aback. Why? Her gaze faltered toward the window, toward a city that stretched beyond anything Ethan could ever imagine affording. I've spent years surrounded by people who only treat me kindly because of my wealth, she said. My assistant, my board members, even my fiancé, everyone treats me like a title, not a human being. Yesterday, I needed to see if kindness still existed without condition. Ethan exhaled slowly. And you chose me? I watched you, she admitted. The way you greeted every customer. The way you helped the elderly couple find their umbrella. The way you slipped extra napkins to the exhausted mother without her asking. And the way you smiled at me even when I was deliberately rude. Ethan looked away, embarrassed. So, she continued softly, when you didn't chase after me for a tip, when you simply cleaned the table and moved on, I knew I'd chosen the right person to test. He shook his head. I wasn't putting on a show. I was just doing my job. That's why it mattered. Silence settled, warm and heavy. Then Eleanor rose and walked to a drawer. She pulled out a folder and placed it gently before him. I did some research last night, she said. You're a single father, widowed, working 2 jobs, behind on rent, but no complaints, no outbursts, just perseverance. He swallowed hard. I didn't call you here to pity you, she added quickly. I called you because I want to offer you something. Ethan stiffened. Offers from billionaires never came without strings. She noticed that too. This isn't charity, she clarified. It's recognition. Opening the folder, she revealed a contract. I want you to work for me. Ethan stared. I'm a waiter. You're a leader, she corrected. You manage chaos with grace. You handle people with empathy. I run a humanitarian foundation that needs people like you, real people who understand struggle and dignity. His heart thudded. The salary printed on the page made his breath hitch. You'd work reasonable hours, Eleanor said. You'd have full benefits. And Liam would have access to the best health care and education programs we offer. He felt dizzy. Why me? He whispered. Her eyes softened. Because yesterday when I looked at you, I saw someone I used to be. Someone trying to stay strong in a world that doesn't make it easy. Emotion welled in his chest. Hope, disbelief, fear, gratitude. And one more thing, she said quietly, sliding a second envelope across the table. This has nothing to do with the job. Consider this personal. Inside was a check that covered every bill he owed, every debt, months of breathing room. He stared at it in silence, overwhelmed. I don't want repayment, Eleanor said. Just pay it forward when life lets you. Ethan closed the envelope with trembling hands. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time understood the loneliness behind her polished exterior. Thank you, he said, voice cracking, for seeing us. She nodded. Sometimes the world needs reminders that goodness still exists. Yesterday you reminded me. Liam trotted over then, holding his coloring page. Miss Eleanor, look, I drew your building. She laughed, a clear, bright sound Ethan had not expected. It's beautiful, she said. And as Ethan watched her kneel beside his son, something inside him whispered at this moment. This meeting born from a $0 tip wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of one, a very different one, for all 3 of them.